Welcome to the channel. I get asked from time to time, with inert rounds, right? They're just made up of a fire casing, so basically range scrap, no explosives, and reheaded. So it's literally just the inert metal parts. Could you just put those in an envelope and send them in the post? It can come up a little bit more outside the cartridge collecting community, especially when you have people who are just coming to inert bullets for the first time, maybe because they want to do an art display or because they're trying to make a costume and they need to have some rounds, or perhaps they're filming. And the whole point, as we all know, is that everyone is trying to get inert rounds that look like the real thing as close as possible, which are completely free of explosives, because then they'd be UK legal. Unfortunately, it's not possible to put them in post. We have done this in the past, and with some of the packages going to Scotland, unfortunately, they actually ended up going on an airplane, and everything that goes onto an airplane gets an X-ray scan, and an X-ray can't determine that this is an inert round with no explosives from another one which might be a live round with explosives. So the whole thing gets destroyed. A letter comes through, or notification comes through to us saying, thank you for submitting your package. Unfortunately, we found prohibited items inside, and we have very kindly decided to destroy the package for you. No need to thank us, but you won't be getting the package back, and your consignee won't be getting the package either. Compensation is not due on this because you sent something that we don't like. Goodbye. So unfortunately, the answer is that we can't send inert rounds in the regular post. We can't put them in an envelope and off they go. In the UK, there are workarounds. There are other couriers available, and most of the traffic does go by road or sea anyway. So as long as we don't use the regular post, but we use a courier, it is still possible to get things sent around fairly cheaply, and it might take a little bit longer, especially if you are perhaps on one of the islands or something and they are going to put it on a ferry, but you will get it eventually and all's well. The problem comes when we have to send something outside the UK. Now, it used to be possible to send things within the EU, being part of the single market, but that's no longer the case. So we have to send as if we're sending to a third country. And that brings into play the whole mess of international traffic in arms treaties, which of course we are signatories to. So is the US, so are pretty much all the European countries. In the US, you're probably aware of it. It's the ITAR, or International Trade in Arms Regulations, and it governs export licenses, or the requirements to get export licenses on anything that could be considered military use or dual use. Dual being that, of course, they're civilian products, or they're used in civilian articles, but they could also be used in military items, and therefore the Department of State has got an interest in making sure they track exactly where these things are going, to whom, and what for. So the same regulations apply to us. We have in the UK the military list of military and dual use items, and that's all administered by the Department for Trade and Industry's Export Control Organization, or ECO. And they issue licenses. They track exactly what is being sent to whom, where, and for what purpose. In order to get a license, there's a fairly long-winded form to complete in which you have to detail everything about the person or any parties that you're sending to, exactly what it is, exactly what implications there may be for cryptography, for nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons development or use. It gets quite complicated, let's put it that way. And it does seem a little bit excessive for something like this. That's going to go into something like this, or something like this. The problem is, components that are for use in firearms include the bullet head, and of course the entire chamber of the cartridge is not open to inspection. There are exemptions in the military list that are available for dummy rounds, but they are specifically for dummy rounds with a pierced chamber. So let me show you what I mean. Here's a 20mm dummy Mark 103 Model 1. When they talk about a pierced chamber, this is what they mean. See how it's all drilled out in the casing, quite roughly. This one's from the Ordnance Museum in Hawthorne, Nevada. So unfortunately, the specification to qualify for the exemption under the military list, it does pretty much make the round useless for collectors, for artists, depending on where they need the holes to be drilled, photographers, film, anybody that actually needs to have as much of the real look of a cartridge intact as possible. The Export Control Organisation in the UK has been quite generous in the past, and they have accepted that the removal of the primer to leave an open hole in the base has been sufficient to allow the item to travel without requiring an export license. That's probably decided on a case-by-case basis, so to be on the safe side, you probably ought to ask every time you want to send rounds that are treated in such a way outside the UK. Just because it's gone through once is no guarantee that it's going to continue like that in the future forever. So these are just some of the implications that are present when it comes to sending inert rounds out of the UK. So I hope this video was interesting, and see you next time. Bye bye!